to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most mind-bogglingly ambitious engineering projects ever proposed, a plan to literally replumb the lifeblood of Egypt, the Nile River. So let's just start with a question that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction. Could you actually build 4 brand new rivers right alongside one of the most famous rivers in all of human history? It's a wild thought, so let's see what this is all about. So what is the Parallel Rivers Project? Well, at its core, it's this visionary, massive idea to construct a whole network of huge waterways that would run parallel to the Nile. And here's the key part. They'd be lined, probably with concrete. Why? To prevent a single drop of that precious water from seeping away into the ground. The goal is nothing short of completely revolutionizing Egypt's relationship with its most vital resource.
Okay, so you have to wonder, why would anyone even dream up something this massive? What's the end game? To get it, you really have to understand the sheer ambition of the vision. What a world with 4 Niles is supposed to accomplish. The project really boils down to 4 huge objectives. First, to capture and use every single drop of Nile water with absolute maximum efficiency. Second, you take all that saved water and use it to turn vast new stretches of desert into farmland. Third, you build entire new cities along these new riverbanks. And finally, the big one, to multiply the country's wealth and resources on a scale that's, well, never been seen before. It's a vision for a totally transformed Egypt. So how on earth would you even begin a project like this? I mean, where do you possibly start? Let's take a look at the blueprint to see how this incredible concept would work, at least on paper. The process is laid out in 4 logical, but absolutely colossal steps. First, you dig and line one completely new river channel next to the Nile. Now, step 2 is the part that just blows my mind. You would divert the entire Nile River into your new channel. Yeah, you heard me right. This would allow you to dry out the original riverbed, dredge it, and line it with concrete. After that, you just kind of repeat the process until you have 4 waterways. And then, build out all the cities and farms around them. Sounds simple on a slide, right? All right, it's time for a reality check. We've been using words like colossal and massive, but what does that actually mean? To really get a handle on the scale here, we have to compare it to the biggest construction projects humans have ever even attempted. And this chart, wow, this really tells the story. You have these other gigantic projects, right? Like the Karakum Canal in Turkmenistan. Then you've got China's south to north water transfer project, which is currently the biggest water project on the planet at 2,400 kilometers. And then you have this proposal. At roughly 6,000 kilometers, it doesn't just beat the record, it completely dwarfs everything that has ever come before it. Let me just say that again so it sinks in. 2.5 times larger. This isn't just an incremental step up. It's a leap into a completely different category of megastructure, one that doesn't even exist yet. Now, when you're talking about a project on this scale, you're also talking about numbers that are, frankly, hard to even wrap your head around. So let's look at the 3 big figures that really define this project's staggering reality. First, the timeline. The conservative estimate for how long this would take is between 150 and 200 years. Think about that for a second. This isn't a project for us, or even for our kids. It's a 6 to 8 generation commitment. Second, the cost. And again, this is seen as a low-end estimate. $8.5 trillion US dollars. To put that into perspective, that's more than the annual GDP of every country on Earth, except for the US and China. It's an almost unimaginable amount of money. And finally, the human cost, which you just can't measure in dollars. The construction would require the forced resettlement of over 2 million people from their homes, their farms, and the communities their families have lived in for generations. So you see these insane numbers, the time, the cost, the human impact, and you have to ask, why? Why is it all so extreme? Well, let's unpack the why by looking at the 5 towering challenges the feasibility study dug into. This risk matrix from this study lays it all out perfectly. See, the problem isn't that there's one big hurdle, it's that everything is a hurdle. Look at these numbers. Technical risk,
95%, extremely high. Financial risk, 90%. The risk across the board is just staggering, which leads to that overall assessment, extremely high. And look, this isn't just an interpretation. The original feasibility study, which was conducted by agricultural engineer Ahmed Hamdi, puts it in no uncertain terms. The report's conclusion is that the overall project risk is, and I'm quoting directly here, extremely high. It's simply off the charts. So let's quickly touch on why. Technically, nobody has ever even tried to divert and align a river the size of the Nile. It's completely unproven. Financially, the cost is about 170 times that of China's already massive project. Environmentally, the disruption to the entire ecosystem could be catastrophic and permanent. Socially, you have that huge resettlement issue, not to mention the impact on cultural heritage sites. And internationally, you can't just alter the Nile's flow without getting all 11 countries in the Nile Basin to agree. Any one of those is a potential deal breaker. So, after all of that, where do we stand? What's the final verdict on this incredibly grand vision? And what happens now? This slide really just puts it all in stark contrast, doesn't it? On one side, you've got this beautiful dream of more water, more land, more growth. But on the other, you just slam into the hard wall of reality, a financially impossible price tag, technical risks we've never faced before, and the threat of severe, irreversible damage to the environment.
So the study's bottom line conclusion is completely unambiguous. In its current form, the Parallel Rivers project is simply not feasible. The barriers are too high, the costs are too great, and the risks are far, far too severe.
But that's not where the story ends. The study doesn't just say no, it actually proposes a much more pragmatic path forward. Instead of one giant all-or-nothing leap, it suggests smaller, smarter steps. Things like building short 10 or 50-kilometer pilot sections to actually test the canal technology, prioritizing research into water efficiency and desalination. Basically, it's about solving the problem with targeted, intelligent solutions, not just one giant high-risk bet.
And that leaves us with a really big final question to think about. This whole project was a response to a very real mega problem, water scarcity. So if this kind of gigantic engineering solution is off the table, it forces us to ask, what will work? What kind of new thinking, what new technologies, and what new kinds of cooperation are going to solve the mega problems of tomorrow?
Your Excellency, Madam Prime Minister, thank you for your time. I have come to you today after studying, well, every single page of the Parallel Rivers Feasibility Report, and I must speak directly, not just as a minister to her leader, but from one Egyptian heart to another. Min al-qalb lil-qalb. The vision, Your Excellency, is the kind of thing that, well, it makes you hold your breath. It's a dream of a new Egypt, an Egypt with not one, but 5 Niles, 4 new, perfectly engineered rivers running parallel to our great Mother Nile, 6,000 kilometers of glistening channels lined to ensure that not one single drop, not one, of our precious water is lost to the earth. The report says this vision could give us a 300% increase in farmland. It could create new cities and provide 4 times the jobs we have today. It's a picture of an Egypt that has conquered thirst, a nation secure for 1,000 years. Sora Gamila Giddan, a very beautiful picture. But, Your Excellency, my most sacred duty is to the truth. Wajibi akalim bisaraha. And the hard truth in this report is that this dream, in its current grand form, is a fantasy. The timeline is 200 years. Miten sana. I mean, this is a project our great-great-grandchildren might see completed. The cost is a number so vast it feels unreal. $8.5 trillion. The report states this would be like taking 15% of our entire national income every single year for the next 2 centuries. It's a burden that would crush our people. And the risks The engineers, they call the technical challenges unprecedented. The environmental scientists warn of, and this is a quote, potentially catastrophic damage to our beautiful Nile Delta. And all of this would require a level of agreement with our 10 neighboring countries on the Nile that has, well, it's never before been achieved. We cannot and we will not act alone on our shared river. Da Nahra el Kol. This is a river for all. So, do we tear up the dream? La abadan. No, never. We are not a people who give up. We are a people who get smart. The report may say this mega project is not feasible, and I agree, but it lights a new path for us. Let us abandon the fantasy of a 6,000-kilometer project we just can't build. Instead, let's build a 50-kilometer reality we can perfect. Let us create a pilot project, a living laboratory, right here on our own land. Here, we can master the technologies of canal lining, we can innovate in smart irrigation and water recycling, we can become the world's experts in making the desert green with a fraction of the water. Let's invest not in digging, but in our brilliant minds. You see, the true path to water security is not about having more water, it's about getting more life from every single drop we are already blessed with. الهدف مش مياه أكبر، الهدف إن نستغل كل نقطة مياه. Yes, the goal isn't more water. The goal is that we utilize every single drop. Your Excellency, we are the descendants of the people who built the pyramids. Our legacy is not in impossible dreams, but in practical genius and relentless work. Let's honor that legacy. Let's build a secure water future, not with the illusion of 5 Niles, but with the brilliance to make our one eternal Nile enough for all of us forever. That is a project we can begin tomorrow. That is a victory we can deliver in our lifetime. Now, here's a question we'd like you to think about. If you cannot simply create more of a precious resource, what is the single most important innovation needed to make the most of what you already have?
What if we didn't just have one Nile River flowing through Egypt, but 4?
4 Niles.
Yeah, imagine a whole network of parallel, fully lined rivers stretching across the country. It sounds, well, almost like science fiction, doesn't it?
It is an incredibly ambitious idea, definitely, proposing such a fundamental change to, well, Egypt's most vital resource.
Exactly. And that's what we're digging into today. There's this proposal that explored doing just that, creating this network of parallel rivers right alongside the original historic Nile.
Yeah, and we've got a preliminary study here. It was actually commissioned specifically to look into this concept.
Ah, go.
It's quite fascinating because it tries to take this grand vision and apply some practical analysis to it, looking at feasibility, timelines.
Right. So our mission today, and this is specifically for you listening, is to really unpack this study. We're going to pull out the key insights, understand the actual proposal, what the study says about whether it's doable, how long it might take, and the massive challenges it points out.
And we're sticking only to what's in this preliminary assessment.
Absolutely. It's about seeing what this initial analysis tells us when you move from like a big idea to the engineering reality.
Or at least the beginnings of figuring out that reality.
Okay, let's start with the proposal itself. What does the study actually say needs to happen step by step to get these 4 main river channels?
Well, the study lays out a sequence of truly monumental steps. First off, you'd create a brand new, fully lined water channel running parallel to the existing Nile.
Lined, meaning like concrete, to stop water loss.
Exactly. The idea is to prevent seepage. Traditional riverbeds lose a lot of water into the ground, so lining it makes it much more efficient.
Okay, so dig a whole new river, basically, and make sure it holds water. Makes sense. What's next?
And then comes a step that's, well, it's pretty staggering. The proposal is to completely divert the entire flow of the original Nile into this new lined channel you just built.
Whoa, hang on. Stop the actual Nile? Completely.
Temporarily, yes. That's the idea described. The purpose behind that diversion is to allow the original Nile channel to dry out.
Okay.
Once it's dry, the plan involves extensive dredging, cleaning it out, and then fully lining it as well, just like the new one.
Right. So at that point, you'd have two line channels, the original Nile now engineered, and the new one that held the water for a bit.
Correct. That's phase one, essentially. And then the plan also includes building lined transversal canals.
Transversal, like running across.
Yes, connecting the main rivers. These would mainly be for distributing water for irrigation to the land in between and around them.
Got it. So how do we get from 2 rivers to 4?
You basically repeat the process. Once those first 2 line channels are up and running, the proposal is to do it all again.
Build another parallel channel.
Yes. Build another one, divert the water again, presumably into one of the already lined channels, dry out whichever main channel needs lining next, line it, and then repeat again. The end goal is this network of 4 main fully lined rivers.
Wow. And the study mentions this isn't just about the water channels themselves, right? There's more to the vision.
Oh, absolutely. It's much broader. Alongside this massive water engineering project, the vision includes huge supporting infrastructure. We're talking about building entirely new cities along these new river corridors.
New cities.
Yes, plus extensive new road networks, new railway lines. Basically, everything needed to connect and support these vast new urban and agricultural areas.
The sheer scale is just
Yeah.
mind-boggling. What are the stated goals in the study? Why propose something this big?
Well, the study outlines some clear, very ambitious goals. The main driver seems to be maximizing the use of Nile water. By lining the channels, reducing seepage, the aim is to make significantly more water available.
Okay, more water efficiency.
Right. And with that extra water, plus all the new land opened up by the rivers and canals, the goal is to massively expand agricultural land.
More farming.
And also increase the amount of urban land for development. Ultimately, the stated objective is potentially doubling various measures of national wealth.
Okay, huge development goals, if it could actually be done. But how on earth did this preliminary study even start to estimate a timeline for something like this? It seems almost impossible to predict.
That's a really good question. They turned to comparative analysis.
Yeah.
To get some sense of the timescale, they looked at other really large global water transfer projects. We'll find some benchmarks.
Okay, like what projects did they compare it to?
The study mentions 2 big ones. First, the South-North Water Transfer Project in China, the SNWT.
Right, the SNWT, that one is enormous.
It really is. The study points out its scale, roughly 2,400 kilometers of main canals and tunnels across its different routes.
Okay.
And it also highlights the time involved. It apparently took something like 50 years just for the planning and the initial construction phases to be completed.
50 years, just for the start. And the cost.
Tens of billions of US dollars. So that gives you one data point.
A very large, very long data point. What was the other comparison?
The Karakum Canal in Turkmenistan.
Ah.
The study notes its length, about 1,375 kilometers, and mentions it also took decades to build. But importantly, the study brings up the significant engineering and environmental problems it faced.
Problems.
Yes, major ones, which tragically were a big factor in the Aral Sea disaster. So that comparison serves as a stark reminder of the potential environmental risks when you manipulate water systems on such a huge scale.
Right. A cautionary tale built into the comparison. So these are the reference points, huge, complex, long, and sometimes problematic projects. How does the proposed Egyptian project stack up in terms of scale?
Well, according to the study's calculations, the proposed Egyptian project is considerably larger just in terms of the main channels. They estimate that creating and lining the 4 main rivers means digging and lining about 6,000 kilometers of channels.
6,000 kilometers.
Yes, basically 4 rivers times the roughly 1,500-kilometer length of the Nile within Egypt.
Okay, 6,000 kilometers for the main rivers, compared to, what was it, 2,400 for the main Chinese routes? That's more than double the length.
More than double. And that's before you even add in the whole network of transversal canals connecting them.
Wow, okay.
And then there's the engineering complexity, which the study flags as unprecedented, especially the part about controlling, completely drying out, and then lining the original Nile.
Right, that sounds uniquely difficult.
It really is. This isn't building a canal somewhere remote. It's intervening directly in Egypt's primary active water source, the lifeline of the country. Managing that process, the disruption, engineering the existing riverbed. It's a challenge unlike what those comparison projects faced.
So you've got much larger scale, plus this unique, massive complexity. What kind of timeline estimate did the study actually come up with?
Okay, so based on those comparisons and factoring in the immense difficulty, The study estimates that just completing the first phase,
Which is one new river plus lining the original Nile.
exactly, just that first part could take minimum 75 to 100 years.
75 to 100 years just for stage one.
That's the preliminary estimate.
That's multiple generations right there, just
Yeah.
for the beginning.
It is. And the estimate for the entire project, all 4 rivers, the canals, the supporting infrastructure,
Yeah.
the study suggests it would exceed 150 to 200 years.
150 to 200 years.
Minimum. And it even adds a note that looking at historical trends for these kinds of mega projects, the actual duration could potentially stretch out for several centuries.
Centuries for one project. That's hard to even wrap your head around. Does the study give any backup for such incredibly long timelines?
It does, yeah. It mentions broader studies that have looked at global mega projects. And these analyses consistently show that huge delays, often years, sometimes decades, and massive budget overruns are, well, almost the norm,
Really?
especially for very large, complex water infrastructure schemes.
Yeah.
So that historical data lends some weight to their estimates. It even suggests that maybe 150, 200 years might be optimistic based on past performance.
No, okay. So the timeline itself is just a monumental obstacle, a project spanning centuries. But the study didn't stop there, right? What other major hurdles did it identify, besides just the time?
No, it definitely didn't stop there. The study outlined several other critical challenge areas. First up is technical feasibility.
Meaning, can it even be done physically?
Pretty much. Is it actually possible to successfully dry out the entire original Nile, manage the water table, the soil conditions, and then structurally line it on that scale? The study says this would need incredibly deep geotechnical and hydrological investigations.
And the outcome isn't guaranteed.
Not at all. It's a fundamental question mark right at the start. We just don't know if the ground conditions and water dynamics would even allow that specific crucial step.
Okay, so basic feasibility is TBD. What else?
Then there's the astronomical cost.
Ah, yes. How much are we talking?
The study puts the estimate in the realm of trillions of dollars.
Trillions with a T.
Trillions. And it raises questions about the proposed funding idea, using future revenue from the new cities and land. The study suggests that might not be nearly enough or even viable, given the massive upfront and ongoing investment needed over centuries.
Trillions. That's just a staggering figure. Pushing the limits of national economics, surely.
It's a huge financial barrier, absolutely. Then, another major concern is environmental impacts.
Right, you can't reshape a whole river system without consequences.
Exactly. Changing the Nile on this scale would inevitably have massive environmental effects. The study specifically flags potential impacts on the Nile Delta, which is incredibly important ecologically and for agriculture.
And the coast?
Yes, a Mediterranean coastline, regional groundwater levels, the entire biodiversity that depends on the current river system. It would all be affected.
So understanding those impacts alone would be a huge undertaking.
Huge, requiring extensive, complex environmental studies just to figure out what might happen, let alone how to possibly mitigate it. The ecological implications are just vast.
Okay. Technical, cost, environmental. What else?
There are also significant social and political challenges. Well, a project this enormous, cutting new paths across the land, would almost certainly require resettling communities currently living along the existing Nile, or where the new channels might go. That's always incredibly difficult and sensitive.
Potential displacement.
And more broadly, think about trying to execute a single project over 200 years. It would demand an extraordinary level of sustained political consensus within Egypt.
Right. Keeping agreement and focus across countless governments and generations.
Exactly. That kind of long-term political alignment and national commitment is, well, incredibly hard for any country to maintain. A huge political hurdle.
Definitely seems like it. Anything else?
Yes, one more crucial challenge, international relations.
Ah, because the Nile isn't just Egypt's river.
Precisely. It's a shared resource. There are multiple countries in the Nile Basin. Any fundamental change to the river's flow, how its water is distributed or its physical form, like diverting the entire stream, would require incredibly complex negotiations.
So international agreements.
Coordination, approvals, agreement from all the relevant Nile Basin countries would be absolutely essential. It adds a whole layer of geopolitical complexity on top of everything else.
Okay. So technical, cost, environmental, social, political, and international hurdles. Bringing all that together, what was the study's final takeaway? What did it conclude?
Well, the study acknowledges that the core idea is, genuinely, a bold and visionary concept for Egypt's future. It recognizes the ambition regarding water, agriculture, urban growth.
There's clearly a but coming.
A very significant but. The key conclusion from this preliminary look is that actually executing this vision faces challenges that are so immense, so profound, that they push the idea closer to science fiction than anything practically feasible, at least in the foreseeable future.
Closer to science fiction, that's a strong statement.
It is. The timeline along, spanning 150 to 200 years, possibly centuries, is just one factor. Add to that the massive uncertainties around technical possibility, the multi-trillion-dollar cost, the vast environmental risks, and the huge political and international difficulties. The study basically says that overcoming all of that would require vastly deeper investigation just to see if it's even remotely possible.
So the bottom line from this initial study is magnificent vision, but the practical realities identified put it way out of reach for now.
That sums it up well. It's a vision that runs into a wall of converging obstacles that, based on this first analysis, look almost insurmountable with current knowledge and capabilities.
Wow. This deep dive really highlights that gulf, doesn't it? Between a truly breathtaking, ambitious idea and the cold, hard realities of trying to implement it. Engineering, money, environment, politics, over centuries.
It really does. And what's fascinating, I think, is how even a preliminary expert look like this study can just lay bare the staggering complexity involved, especially when you're talking about fundamentally altering something like a nation's main water source.
Yeah.
It really makes you appreciate the immense practicalities that underpin everything, even the grandest visions.
It certainly does. And, given that multi-century timeline the study talks about and all those immense hurdles, it raises a pretty interesting question for you, the listener, to think about. At what point does a visionary concept like this, one that's so challenging and so incredibly long-term, stop being a definable project with a start and an end, and maybe become something more like a generational aspiration, or maybe even something else entirely?